Hi, my name is Stuart Lynch, and in this video, I'd like to show you how to create a reusable custom calendar that you might be able to use for your projects for different purposes. This video has a follow-up video where I use it like a new charts option to display tallies of events occurring on a specific date. So we got lots to cover here, so let's dig in. I love getting your feedback, so tap the thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video and leave a comment below. Make sure you subscribe to the video and ring that bell to get notifications of new videos. And if you want to support my work, you can buy me a coffee. There is no starter project for this video, so if you want to follow along with me, and I would advise that you do, create a brand new Swift iOS application and call it Custom Calendar. The first thing I want to do is to make this more or less a reusable view. And so that means I'm going to rename Content View as Calendar View. Well, this calendar I'm going to build is very close to what Sean Allen built in his widget course. So full credit to Sean for coming up with using a lazy V-grid to display a calendar. It really is quite brilliant. And I'm going to be adding my own twist to it, but I couldn't have done this without Sean's code. I'll leave a link to his course in the description. I'm not an affiliate and receive no compensation promoting Sean's work, but quality content deserves promotion regardless. Sean's focus is on displaying this nice little calendar in widgets, but my focus will be on using it within an application itself. In this video, I'll show you how you can build this app to build a calendar for a month based on a specific date and be able to change the date and color of the calendar through a couple of pickers. Now that might be enough to get you going, but if you want to see how I use this in an app to display tally counts for a variety of things, then watch the follow-up video for this. I'll leave a link in the description. It'll be released 1 week after this video has been released. Now, I'll be taking a different approach to building a calendar around a specific date though, but the design is 100% based on what I learned in Sean's course. Our calendar is going to be based on a specific date, so I'll display the month where that date is contained. I'll also want to be able to specify a color for that month. In subsequent videos, I'll show you how you can use this calendar to add tallies of events that might have happened on specific dates, and there may be several different types of events that I may wish to group on, so I'd like to present the calendars in a different color. So the first thing I want to do is to create a state property for each. First for color, and I'll initialize it with blue. And then for the date, I'll specify date.now. So I'm going to replace the contents of the VStack here with two labeled content views. For the first, the label will be a text view using the string calendar color, and the content's going to be a color picker. And we can leave the title key as an empty string, but bind this selection to our color property and set the support's opacity to false. For the second labeled content, it'll be for date/time. And then the content will be a date picker. Again, we'll leave the title key empty, and the selection this time will be bound to our date state property. Next, we can start by building a calendar that will display a calendar for the month that the date resides in. So first, the header, which will be just the first letter of each day of the week. So I can create an array, and it can be a constant that I can use, and I can simply type in the first letters of each day of the week, like I'm starting to do here. Trouble is that this will only match English. What if we were in a different locale with a different language? Well, I've created a gist that will do that for you. And in fact, I have to admit I used ChatGPT to do this. There are two static variables in this gist. One of them will be used in the follow-up video, so I'm providing them both here so you can continue on with that video. Just copy the text from that gist. Back in your Xcode project, create a new file and call it Date+Extension. And it's in here that you're going to paste those two static functions. Now they're not really extensions on date, but they're related to date. We'll be creating many more computed properties in here shortly. And then I can go back to my calendar view and then change that days of week to be the dates, capitalized first letters of the week computed property. For the next element in the VStack, we'll create an HStack. And then we can create a for each loop that will iterate over those days of week array and specify that the ID is self to give you a day of the week that you can use. And then we can display a text view displaying that string. Now I have a problem with this because the array is supposed to be made up of unique values if I am using self for the ID. And in my case, in English at least, I've got a couple of days of the week where the first letters are the same, like Tuesdays and Thursdays or Saturdays and Sundays. So even though this may work, I don't think you should do it because it may break, if not now, possibly in the future. Fortunately, there's a solution. Instead of iterating over days of the week, I'll iterate over days of the week indices. And this will then provide us with an index. So I can just change that for each loop then to be the days of week at that index. So let's stylize that now. We'll set a font weight to black. We'll set the foreground style to the color property. Set the frame to a max width of infinity. Your header should now span the width of the screen. Below the header, we want to create a calendar that will display the days of the month. And we're going to have to determine how many days there are in the month, along with a day of the week it starts on. Like, for example, in January of 2024, it's a Tuesday. But we'll get to that. Let's just get the layout working. We'll be creating a lazy V grid right here below the top. So we'll need to first specify the number of columns. And since there's going to be 7 columns equally spanning the width of our VStack, we can create a columns property as an array of repeating items 7 times. And those items that we're going to be repeating will be a grid item, and I'll specify the flexible type. So now then we can create a lazy V grid with those columns and get the content view builder. Now I'm going to create another property called days that's an open range from 1 up to but not including 32, which is the maximum number of days that there will be in a month. Then within the for each loop, we can iterate over those days with the ID being itself to give us a day that we can use. So we can just display a text view with a string interpolation to display the day. Now, in order to give each day some prominence, let's apply a font weight of bold. I'll set the foreground style to secondary. I'll apply a max width frame of infinity, but a minimum height I'll set to 40. And I'm also going to apply a background that is going to be a circle, where the foreground style will be our color, but I'll set the opacity to 0.3. Well, this is looking pretty good, but our months don't always start on a Sunday, and there are not always 31 days. But this is now the beauty behind Sean's design. What we need to do now is to create an array of dates to fill in this calendar, but make sure that we start on the correct day of the week. For example, this month, that is January 2024, January 1st is a Monday, which means Sunday, the previous Sunday, is December 31st, 2023. And the way to do this is to create an array of all days for this month, where the date is, and an array of all the days in the previous month. We'll find out what the day of the month is for the Sunday prior to the first day of the month specified, and then remove all of the days previous to that. So in this month's case, I'll only keep one day from the previous month. Each time I pick a new date, I can refresh my array. So we'll start by replacing our days property with a state property that's an empty array of date. Of course, this will remove all the days, but even if we had some, we can't display the day in the text view. We just want to display the day number for that day. Unfortunately, this has become pretty easy now in Swift. We can specify the day formatted using the datetime.day properties. So now we need to create that array of days. So I'm going to return to my date extension and create some computed properties here. So first we'll create one called start of month. That's a date. It's going to return the start day of the month for the specified date. So you can use the calendar.current.date interval function, where you can specify the date component of the month for the date that we're acting on, which is an optional. So we'll need to unwrap it. And this is safe here because we're specifying a date and the extension. Then we can access the start, which will now give us that date. This means we can choose any date and apply the start of month, and it will return the first day of that month. Well, we can create a similar computed property for end of the month. The only difference here is that we specified the end, and you'd think that this would be correct. Well, the problem is this actually returns the first day of the next month at midnight. So it's kind of misleading. This means we'll need to assign this first to a variable, which I can call last day, even though it's really not, but that's all semantics. And then what we can do is we can return the calendar.currentDate by adding a day component with a value of -1 to back up once to that last day. And this will help us calculate the days in a month, as you'll see. So we'll also need to know the beginning of the previous month. So we do this by first subtracting 1 month from the date we're working on. So calendar.current.date by adding the month component with a value of 1 to self. And then we can return that date's start of month. Now to calculate the number of days in the month, well, all we need to do is return the day component for the end of the month. Then finally, I can determine the Sunday before the start, which will be a date. So we'll start by finding the start of the month weekday by fetching the calendar.current.component of weekday from the start of the month, and that'll return an ordinal value for the first day of the month. And for us in January 2022, that's a Monday, and that's a value of 2. This means then that we'll need to back up and use 1 day from that previous month to fill in our calendar. Well, the actual date we will return is the calendar.current.date by adding those number of days, which is a negative, to the start of the month. With this information then, I can start to build the days for the month containing any specified day. And this is where I veer off from what Sean does in his video. I'm going to create a computed property inside this extension that I'm going to call calendar display days that will return an array of date. So we'll start by declaring an empty array of date and call it days. Then I'm going to create a loop that will use the variable offset as an iterator and step from 0 up to the number of days in the month for the specified date. And then we can create a new day by specifying the calendars.current.date by adding a day component with a value of the offset to the start of the month for that date. So that's just going to loop through every single day and add a new day corresponding to the day of the month to our array. So that'll give us the current month. And we do that by appending this to the days array. Well, we'll need to do the same for the previous month, so we can get those days at the beginning of the month from the calendar to fill out the space. So the day offset this time will go from 0 up to the start of the previous month's number of days in the month. And then the new day can be constructed by adding, again, using the calendar.current.date, adding a day component with a value of the offset to the start of the previous month. And we'll append that day. Looks like I got another one of my typos here. That's not how you spell previous. So now we have a big array containing 2 whole months. What we want to do is to exclude those days that precede the first Sunday before this current month. So we can filter the days where the iterator $0 is greater than or equal to the Sunday before start, and it's less than or equal to the end of the month. Now we can sort them by less than, which will sort by date. And of course, we'll need to return this. So I can return now to our calendar view, and in the onAppear block, I can set the days array to this computed property for the specified date. And I'll also want to watch for any changes of that date and repeat the same refresh. Now in my view, I don't want to see those days that are not in the current month, however. So for this, I'm just going to return to my date extension file and create another computed property. And I'm going to call it monthInt. And this simply extracts the month number using the month component from the current calendar for that specified date. So back in calendar view, where we present the days, we can create an if clause to check to see if the iterated days monthInt is not equal to the date monthInt. Remember, date is that property that we created at the top of our view here, and it may change. And if that's the case, we want to hide it by using an empty string. Else, we can display our days. So you can see that the day that I created in this video was in January 2024, and the first of the month is a Monday, and there are 31 days in this month. Well, let me pick a different day in the month now, like one from last year. Notice how the calendar updates and changes? Let's return to this year. Well, what I want to also show is the current day on the month if we're in that month. So what we have to do is to check if today's date and see if it's in the current month that we're viewing, and if the days match. And since our days in our array may have different times, we'll want to check and compare if the start of the day is the same. So for that, we'll need one more date extension. So I'll return to the date extension once more, and I'm going to create a start of day, which is a date, and I'll simply return the calendar.current.start of day for self. So back in our calendar view where we create the background, I'm going to use a ternary operator to compare the date.now.start of day, which is the current day, to the day, which is our one that we're specifying for our calendar's start of day. And if they are the same, I'll apply a color.red with an opacity of 0.3. Otherwise, we'll use the specified color. So you can see that I recorded this video on January 22nd. If I go to some other month, the colors won't change because the current day is not within that month. Well, I also forgot to show you how you can change the color of the calendar. So I can pick any day from our picker, and I can change the color, and your calendar will change accordingly. Well, this is a very useful tool now, especially if you want to display tallies on a given day. For example, perhaps you have an application that records the days that you perform a particular workout, like this one. What I'd like to do is to display the number of times I worked out on any given day. Not only for all workouts, but for a particular one. Well, if you're interested in how I customize this calendar to do that, watch the follow-up video to this one. Now, this video is scheduled to be released in the following week from this video. So if you're watching this video before then, make sure you subscribe to my channel to get notifications so you'll know when it drops. Otherwise, the link is in the description.